Rain hammered the windshield the night everything changed. A stranger climbed into my cab share. Soaked and breathless. She said, "Just don't kick me out. Please." I nodded without asking why. Her eyes met mine in the rearview mirror, and I forgot my stop. 6 months later, she vanished without a single word. Then a wedding invitation arrived with her name printed on it. Not as a guest, as the bride. I had 48 hours to decide if I'd let her go forever. My name is Alexandra Monroe. Lex to everyone who mattered. And I had spent 29 years being careful with my heart. I was an ER nurse in Boston, used to chaos, but nothing prepared me for the storm Jordan Reyes would bring into my quiet life. That rainy Tuesday, the rideshare app glitched and paired two strangers into one car during a downpour that flooded half the city. I climbed in first, dripping, exhausted after a 16-hour shift, when the door opened again and a woman ducked in beside me. "Sorry. App says we're sharing," she said, shaking water from dark curls, apologizing like the storm itself was her fault. I mumbled it was fine, though my pulse did something unfamiliar the moment she smiled at me in the dim streetlight. She introduced herself as Jordan, an architect heading home from a job site disaster. Voice tired but warm and unexpectedly funny. We talked about nothing important, bad coffee, worse weather, yet 20 minutes felt like 5. And neither of us reached for our phones. When the driver stopped at her building, she hesitated, then asked if I wanted to grab coffee sometime, scribbling her number on a receipt. I told myself it was just a new friend, that the flutter in my chest was only leftover adrenaline from the storm. 3 days later I texted her, then deleted it, then sent it anyway before I could talk myself out of the risk. She replied within a minute. "Finally. I was starting to think I imagined you." We met at a small diner near the harbor, and she remembered every strange detail I'd mentioned in that cab, down to my coffee order. I found myself laughing more in 1 hour than I had in months, unguarded in a way that both thrilled and terrified me. She talked about growing up in San Diego, moving east for architecture school, chasing a career her father never quite approved of. I didn't tell her yet that I'd never dated a woman before, that I was still untangling what I felt from what I feared. When she reached across the table to wipe syrup from my thumb, the touch lingered a second longer than friendship required. Walking me to my car, she said, "I don't usually do this," and I asked, "Do what?" She just smiled and looked away. I drove home replaying that smile, furious at myself for wanting to see her again so badly. So soon? So completely. My best friend Rachel Kim noticed the change first, teasing that I hadn't smiled at my phone like that since college. I brushed it off, calling Jordan just a friend, even as I found excuses to text her between every patient I treated. 2 weeks in, she invited me to see a rooftop she designed. City lights spread beneath us like scattered stars. Standing on that rooftop, she admitted she'd been nervous all week, that something about me made her want to be honest for once. "Honest about what?" asked, and she said quietly, "About liking you. Really liking you. Not as a friend." My breath caught, half fear, half relief, because I'd been carrying the same unspoken truth for weeks without daring to name it. I told her I'd never felt this way about a woman before, that I was scared. And she said fear was allowed here. She didn't push, didn't rush me, just reached for my hand and let the silence hold whatever I wasn't ready to say. That night I went home and cried, not from sadness, but from the exhausting relief of finally feeling seen without hiding. Our first kiss came a week later, in the rain again. Like the city itself kept orchestrating our story around storms. It was soft, hesitant, then certain. And afterward she laughed and said, "I've been wanting to do that since the taxi." I started rearranging my shifts around her schedule, memorizing her coffee order, learning the particular quiet she needed after long work days. She met Rachel over brunch, and my best friend approved instantly, Teasing that Jordan finally made me stop talking about work constantly. Weeks turned into months, and I began imagining a life that included her without flinching at the thought anymore. She showed me blueprints of a community center she was designing pro bono, passionate in a way that made me fall harder. I brought her homemade soup during a brutal flu, and she joked I was the only nurse who made house calls for free. We built small rituals, Sunday farmers markets, late movies. Her terrible attempts at cooking that I pretended tasted fine. I hadn't told my mother yet. Kept Jordan folded carefully into the parts of my life my family never asked about. Jordan noticed the omission but didn't press. Only said, "Whenever you're ready." I'm not going anywhere. One night she admitted her own family was complicated too. That her father ran a construction empire built on old-fashioned expectations. "He wants a certain kind of daughter," she said, staring at her hands. "And I've never been very good at being her." I squeezed her hand and told her she didn't have to explain herself to me, that I liked exactly who she was. She looked at me like no one had ever said that to her before, and something in her posture softened permanently. 6 weeks in, she took me to meet her college roommate, introducing me simply as someone important, and my chest ached with happiness. I started dreaming in specifics: her apartment, her laugh at 2 a.m., a future I'd never let myself picture before. We spent a weekend at a cabin near the coast, and for 2 full days, no one's expectations existed but our own. She told me she loved me on that trip, voice shaking slightly, like the words cost her something to release. I said it back without hesitation, surprising myself with how natural the truth felt once it finally left my mouth. Back in the city, reality crept in, my mother calling about a family friend's son she wanted me to meet. I deflected as always, but the calls grew more frequent, more pointed, laced with hints about grandchildren and settling down. Jordan sensed my tension after those calls and asked gently if I was ready to tell my mother about us. I wasn't. And admitting that out loud made me feel like I was failing her, even as she insisted she understood. "Take your time," she said, though a flicker of hurt crossed her face before she could hide it completely. Jordan's own phone started ringing more too, her father's name flashing insistently, calls she often silenced without explanation. I asked once what he wanted, and she said only, "Business stuff. Nothing important," a little too quickly for me to believe. We attended a charity gala together, and for one public night, we stood close as something more than colleagues or friends. A woman named Vivian Cross approached us, a sharp, introducing herself as an old associate of Jordan's father with too many questions. Jordan's smile turned brittle around Vivian, and she steered our conversation away with unusual urgency, gripping my hand tighter. Later that night she seemed distracted, staring at her phone, jaw tight, saying only that Vivian knew people who talked too much. I let it go, chalking it up to family stress, unaware I was standing at the edge of a secret about to surface. My mother finally cornered me at Sunday dinner, asking outright if there was someone I'd been disappearing to see lately. Heart pounding. I admitted there was someone, though I stopped short of saying her name was Jordan, not James. My mother's face lit up wrongly. "Assume minha mãe." And I let the silence answer instead of correcting her. Ashamed of my cowardice, Rachel scolded me afterward, saying I couldn't keep living in that gap between truth and comfortable silence forever. "You're not protecting her by hiding her," Rachel said. "You're protecting yourself. And that's not fair to Jordan." Her words stung because they were true, and I promised myself I'd tell my mother soon, once I found the right moment. Then Jordan canceled our weekend plans abruptly, citing family obligations, her voice tighter than I'd ever heard it before. I offered to come with her, and she said no so fast it felt like a wall slamming shut between us. 3 days of silence followed, unusual for us, and worry gnawed at me every time my phone stayed dark and quiet. When she finally called, her voice cracked as she asked me to meet her at our diner, the one from our first date. She sat across from me looking hollowed out, twisting a napkin into shreds before finally meeting my eyes with dread. "There's something I should have told you from the beginning," she said. And my stomach dropped at the weight in her tone. "My father arranged an engagement for me 2 years ago. To Daniel Whitfield. I never officially ended it." The words landed like a slap, and I sat frozen, waiting for context that would somehow make this survivable. She explained it was a business arrangement between families, that she'd been stalling the wedding for years, hoping it would quietly dissolve. I told myself it wasn't real, that it would never actually happen, she said. But the contracts got signed last spring. I asked why she never mentioned it, voice shaking. And she said shame kept her silent, fear that I'd leave immediately. "You should have told me the night we met," I said, standing, my chest tight with betrayal I hadn't felt in years. "I know," she whispered. "I know. And I'm sorry. But Lex, I love you, not him." That part was never a lie. I walked out into the rain without an umbrella, letting it soak me the way it had the night we met. For a week I refused her calls, replaying every soft moment between us, wondering how much of it had been real. Rachel sat with me through takeout containers and quiet crying, saying only that I deserved someone who chose me openly, first. But I missed Jordan with an ache that no amount of anger could fully drown out, no matter how hard I tried. She showed up at my apartment on the 8th night, drenched again, holding a folder of documents like evidence for a trial. "I filed to formally end the engagement," she said. "It's not finalized, but I started. I should have done it sooner." I let her in, listening as she explained her father's threats, cutting her from the firm, from the family name entirely. "I don't care about the money," she said. "I care about losing you because I was too scared to fight for us." I wanted to believe her completely, but trust, once cracked, doesn't mend in a single rainy apartment confession. We agreed to slow down, to rebuild honestly. No more secrets folded quietly into convenient silences between us. My mother called again, and this time, exhausted from hiding, I finally said the words, "Mom, I'm seeing a woman. Her name is Jordan." The line went silent for a long, brutal moment before my mother said only, "We'll discuss this at dinner. In person." I dreaded that dinner more than any 12-hour shift, more than any code I'd ever run in the emergency room. Jordan offered to come with me, and this time, I said yes, needing her steadiness against whatever waited at that table. My mother's dining room felt smaller than I remembered, my father quiet, my younger brother watching everyone like a tennis match. "This is Jordan," I said, hand trembling slightly in hers, and my mother's polite smile didn't reach her guarded eyes. Dinner passed in stilted small talk, my mother asking Jordan pointed questions about her plans and family expectations, instead of anything genuine. Afterward, alone in the kitchen, my mother said quietly, "I just want grandchildren. Lex, a normal life for you." "This is my normal life," I said, voice steadier than I felt. "And I need you to try, even if you don't understand yet." She didn't respond, just rinsed dishes with unnecessary force, and I left that night unsure if we'd taken a step forward or back. Jordan squeezed my hand in the car, saying, "She didn't say no. That's something. Give her time." At work, Rachel had grown distant lately, canceling our usual lunches, texting less, something I chalked up to her own stress. I didn't know yet that Rachel had seen Jordan leaving a hotel with Daniel Whitfield weeks earlier, a meeting misread completely out of context. That meeting had actually been Jordan finalizing paperwork to dissolve the engagement. But Rachel never asked before drawing her own conclusion. At a mutual friend's birthday party, Rachel had too much wine and said loudly, "Does Jordan know you know about Daniel?" The room quieted, and I asked what she meant, dread pooling in my stomach as every eye turned toward us. I saw them together. At a hotel. Weeks ago, Rachel said. I just didn't want to be the one to tell you. Jordan's face went pale. And I felt the ground shift beneath a relationship I thought had finally found solid footing. That was about ending the engagement, Jordan said. I told you that already. Lex. Ask her when this was. The dates didn't align with betrayal. Only with the paperwork Jordan had already confessed to weeks before this ambush. Still, doubt crept in anyway. Because trust is fragile. And public humiliation has a way of reopening barely healed wounds. I left the party early. Jordan following. Both of us shaken by how easily one comment could unravel careful progress. Later I learned Rachel had been struggling privately, questioning her own sexuality, and my happiness with Jordan stirred complicated jealousy in her. She hadn't meant to lie exactly, only to weaponize a half-truth out of a pain she wasn't ready to name yet. My mother, meanwhile, had been quietly asking around, and somehow the party gossip reached her before I could explain the context. She called. Furious. Accusing me of hiding a scandal, of embarrassing the family with a woman still tangled in another engagement. I tried explaining, but she'd already decided her narrative, and nothing I said seemed to break through her disappointment. I can't support this, she said. Not the woman. Not the secrecy. Not any of it, and hung up before I could respond. Jordan's father, informed by Vivian Cross, escalated his own threats, giving Jordan an ultimatum: the wedding to Daniel, or nothing at all. He said he'd cut me off entirely, Jordan told me, tears finally breaking through her usual composure. The firm. The family. Everything. I asked what she wanted to do, terrified of the answer, and she said, I don't know yet. I need time to think. Those words felt like the beginning of an ending, and I braced myself for a loss I could already sense coming. We fought that night, both exhausted and scared, saying things neither of us fully meant but couldn't quite take back either. Maybe this was always going to be too complicated, I said, and she didn't argue, which frightened me more than any argument would. She left my apartment without another word, and I sat on my kitchen floor until the sun rose, hollow and uncertain. Weeks passed with only sparse, formal texts between us, both too proud and too hurt to reach out first. My mother stayed distant too, our calls reduced to logistics, the warmth between us replaced by careful, painful politeness. Rachel apologized eventually, admitting her jealousy, admitting she'd been afraid to face her own questions about who she really was. I forgave her slowly. Understanding pain doesn't excuse harm, but it does explain it, and I needed my friend back. Then, one gray morning, an invitation arrived at my apartment, embossed and formal, the wedding of Jordan Elena Reyes to Daniel Whitfield. My hands shook reading it, disbelief curdling into something sharper, grief for a future I'd let myself believe in. I called Jordan immediately, and she answered quietly, saying, My father sent those out. I didn't stop him in time. Why not? I demanded, and she admitted fear had frozen her, that losing everything felt too large to face alone. I need you to fight for this, I said. For us. Or I need you to let me go completely. No more waiting. She asked for one more week, one final conversation with her father before deciding anything permanently, and reluctantly, I agreed. That week stretched unbearably, my shifts blurring together, Rachel checking on me daily, my mother's silence still an open wound. On the 5th day, Daniel Whitfield called me directly, voice careful, asking to meet somewhere private and unexpected. We met at a quiet cafe, and he said, I know about you and Jordan. I've known for months. I need to explain something. He confessed he'd agreed to the arranged marriage for his own reasons, pressure from his family to appear a certain way publicly. I'm gay, he said simply, and my family would disown me if they knew. This marriage was supposed to protect us both.
이셋스턴.
Realizing the wedding was never truly about love at all, but two people trapped by the same fear. Jordan doesn't know I know your secret, he added. But I think it's time all of us stopped hiding from everyone. He said he planned to tell his own parents the truth before the wedding, refusing to trap Jordan in his convenient lie any longer. I left that cafe with something unexpected, not relief exactly, but a fragile, dangerous hope I hadn't allowed myself in weeks. I called my mother, needing someone in my corner, and to my surprise, she actually picked up on the first ring. I've been thinking, she said before I could speak, about your grandmother's sister. I never told you about Aunt Ruth properly. She explained that decades ago, Ruth had loved a woman named Frances, hidden for a lifetime, dying without ever saying it aloud. I found their letters after she passed, my mother admitted, and I promised myself I'd never make someone I love live like that. Then why did you react the way you did? Asked, voice breaking. And she said, fear. Old habits. I'm still learning. Lex. I don't want you hiding a life the way Ruth did, she continued. I just didn't know how to say that properly. It wasn't a perfect apology, but it was honest. And for the first time in weeks, I felt something loosen in my chest. The wedding is in 4 days, I told her. Jordan's. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. My mother, surprising me completely, said, then you go and you tell her the truth, whatever that truth is. Rachel echoed the same thing that night, adding, you've spent your whole life being careful. Try being brave instead. Just this once. I drove to Jordan's father's estate the day before the wedding, heart pounding harder than during any hospital emergency I'd ever run. Richard Reyes answered the door himself, surprised, guarded, asking coldly what business I had showing up uninvited like this. I love your daughter, I said plainly. And I think you know this wedding isn't what either she or Daniel actually wants. He scoffed, calling it modern nonsense, insisting the marriage protected the family name and decades of hard-earned business reputation. Reputation built on two people's misery isn't something worth protecting, I said, surprising even myself with the steadiness in my voice. Jordan appeared in the hallway then, pale, having overheard everything, eyes moving between her father and me with visible panic. Dad. Please, she said. Just let me talk to her. Alone. This isn't fair to anyone, especially not to Daniel. Richard's jaw tightened, but something in Jordan's voice, steadier than usual, made him step back and allow the conversation. We stood in the hallway of the house she grew up fearing to be honest in, finally saying everything we'd avoided saying. I was going to go through with it, she admitted, because I didn't think I deserved to choose happiness over duty. You do deserve it, I said. But I can't keep loving someone who won't choose herself, let alone choose me. I'm choosing now, she said, voice cracking. I'm calling off the wedding tonight, whatever it costs me. I should have done it weeks ago. Her father, overhearing, exploded, threatening to remove her from the firm entirely, to erase her name from every project she'd built. Then erase it, Jordan said, standing taller than I'd ever seen her. Because I'd rather build something honest from nothing than live comfortably lying. Richard stared at his daughter for a long, silent moment before turning and walking away without another word between them. Jordan sank onto the staircase, shaking. And I sat beside her, holding her the way she'd once held me through fear. I'm sorry it took me this long, she whispered. You deserved someone braver. Sooner. Not someone who almost married someone else. You're brave now, I said. And now is what matters. The rest we figure out together. One honest day at a time. Daniel called that night too, thanking Jordan for finally saying what he'd been too afraid to say himself for years. He told his own parents the truth the following morning, and though it was hard, he said honesty felt lighter than any lie. The wedding, course, never happened, and the fallout rippled through both families for weeks in loud, uncomfortable waves. Richard refused to speak to Jordan for nearly a month, her name absent from family gatherings, her calls left unanswered deliberately. Jordan grieved that silence, but didn't waver, saying some doors have to stay closed before they can honestly reopen. She lost her position at the family firm but landed quickly at a smaller studio that valued her talent over her last name. I watched her build something entirely her own for the first time, unburdened. And it suited her more than gold-plated approval ever had. My own mother surprised me further, asking to meet Jordan again properly, this time without judgment folded into every question. Over coffee, my mother told Jordan about Aunt Ruth, about the letters, about wanting to do better this time around. Jordan cried quietly, saying it meant more than my mother could know. Having spent so long expecting only rejection from families like mine, Rachel and I repaired our friendship slowly. Honest conversations replacing old resentments, her own journey unfolding at her own careful pace. She eventually admitted to herself, then to us, that she'd been questioning her identity for years, grateful we hadn't given up on her. 3 months after the almost wedding, Richard called Jordan unexpectedly, voice gruff, asking simply if he could see her design portfolio. It wasn't an apology exactly, but it was a door left open, and Jordan walked through it cautiously, hopeful but guarded. Slowly, dinners resumed, awkward and quiet at first, then gradually warmer. As Richard watched his daughter thrive outside his control, he never fully embraced the idea of me. Not immediately, but he stopped leaving the room whenever I entered it, which felt like progress. My mother, meanwhile, became unexpectedly fierce in her support, correcting relatives at gatherings who used the wrong words about us. "This is my daughter's partner," she'd say firmly, "and I'd appreciate you treating her with the respect she deserves in my house." Jordan and I moved in together that spring, choosing a small apartment near the harbor, close to where our story first began. We hung Aunt Ruth's letters, carefully framed, in our hallway, a reminder of silence we refused to inherit or repeat. Daniel remained a close friend, eventually finding his own quiet happiness with a man named Peter he'd met through mutual friends. Rachel stood beside me at every milestone after that, finally comfortable enough to bring her own girlfriend to Sunday dinners too. A year after the taxi ride that started everything, Jordan proposed on that same rooftop where she'd first said she liked me. "I don't want to hide anymore from anyone," she said. "I just want to build a life with you." Loudly. Honestly. Completely. I said yes before she even finished the sentence, laughing through tears at how far we'd both traveled to arrive there. My mother cried at our small backyard ceremony, seated beside Richard, who came alone but came nonetheless. Awkward but present. He gave a short, stiff toast, admitting he'd learned more about courage from his daughter than from 30 years running a company. Rachel caught the bouquet, blushing, her girlfriend laughing beside her, and for once nothing about the moment felt complicated at all. Standing there, married to the woman from that rainy cab ride, I thought about every version of myself too afraid to arrive here. Every hidden call, every careful silence, every fear had led, somehow, to this exact unguarded, sunlit, ordinary Tuesday afternoon. Some love stories start with fireworks. Ours started with a rideshare glitch and a stranger too stubborn to be forgotten. And I would relive every rainy, uncertain mile of that road again, just to arrive at her eyes one more time. Fendi.